Welcome back to Telor Worldbuilding. Let's talk about some culture. In the forests, plains, and wilds that was once the Kingdom of Iridéa, there are three main cultural groups: the coastal and riverine Nymalo, who inhabit the coastal cities and riverside farms of old Iridéa; the extremely varied group of horse riders, herders, bards, and sedentary farmers of the Hirnalo; the final cultural group is the Gilbalo, which developed in the foothills and shadows of the Ice Spire and Teal mountains, who we'll be covering in this video. I'll talk about the Nymalo and Hirnalo in another video. The Gilbalo's name literally means the hill folk, and this is quite apt. These people first evolved as a culture around 100 SR. For reference, the current date is 921 SR, as herders and nomads. These early Gilbalo had little interaction with the more lowland Nymalo in their early cities and with their iron tools. At this stage, the Gilbalo still told campfire stories of the strange metal magics the lowlanders conjured, and how, with fire, they bent rock into dangerous weapons. These tales did not last long, as the Gilbalo quickly picked up the trade of metallurgy from the lowlander cultures and found iron extremely useful in their hilly, rocky terrains. This began the transition from being nomadic herders of their horses and goats into a sedentary agricultural people. The interchange between the early Gilbalo and early Nymalo saw the first rise of an extremely important god, Hellohorn the Spring Father. In Gilbalo lore, he was a sylvan spirit, but the Nymalo city-states just ran with it until Hellohorn became one of the most important gods of the Iridéan religion, the lord of the harvest, food, and the coming spring. However, the War of Irons began, which resulted in a few Nymalo city-states growing a bit too powerful and went to war with the rest. This firmly cut off the Gilbalo for the next 2 centuries, which would see the further independent evolution of their culture and beliefs. This brings us to the founding of the Iridéan Kingdom, where the King of Baronies invaded and took control of the dispersed and divided Finori peoples. The Gilbalo of Telor were not one for warring, so even in their homeland they are defeated in battle and taken control of by Iridéa and its first king. It turns out, having established trade routes with a wealthy kingdom like Iridéa, or the Dwarves of Teal, was actually extremely useful, so the Doridian and Parafin Gilbalo willingly joined Iridéa, having heard word from their cousins in Telor that it was actually a pretty damn good trading deal. The Gilbalo population nearly doubled in the centuries under Iridéan rule. However, the worm-waking would end this golden age of man. The Dwarves of Teal dug too greedily and too deep, and they awakened an ancient race of dragons, the Father Worms. These monolithic beasts would lay waste to both Teal and parts of Iridéa, destroying order, unity, and both kingdoms. The Gilbalo bordering the Teal Mountains were hit the hardest, with their own militias unable to defend against these fiery gods of the ancient world. Soon, however, what remained of Iridéa's army confronted the Worms in the Firefront Plain, named so as the Worms burnt to the ground in the ensuing battle, which has now passed into legend and folktale. The Father Worms were driven back and Iridéa fell. However, most Gilbalo survived the cataclysm one way or another. The Parafin Gilbalo were too distant from the main fighting to be destroyed, and the Gilbalo villages of Finor were resourceful, hiding in the hills and forests of their home. Soon, Gilbalo life returned to a relative normalcy. Around 100 years ago, where communication and trade was reopened with the remaining baronies of Iridéa, Dorania, Finor, and Praf. Let's get on to the actual culture of the Gilbalo. Let's start with some Gilbalo cuisine, as a culture's food can tell a lot about that culture. Make some Gilbalo cuisine begins with this tall fern called a basilmoot. It can be up to 1.5 meters tall and is extremely common, pretty much everywhere, coating the grounds in huge fields, above 150 meters above sea level. Basilmouth has long hanging leaves with a gradient of color from yellowish greens to darker forest greens. The leaves themselves can be gathered and grinded with water and a touch of honey or milk to make easily accessible green dye and pigment, which is why the color green is so common in Gilbalo art and clothing as a symbol of their culture. During spring, the ends of the basilmouth leaves unfurl to reveal between 4 to 10 golden fuzzy buds. They taste sweet, which is enticing for birds, which then carry these buds, which bear basilmouth seeds far and wide. Humans have also learned how to eat these buds and obtain more nutrition from them. During the first month of spring, the month of Heldin, a common sight is Gilbalo children wandering amongst the basilmouth fields picking as many buds as they can find. Preferably, you can fill 2 baskets full of buds, one for spring and one for winter. The buds preserve well in cool, dry pantries and environments, which makes Gilbalo pantries perfect for containing these buds and storing them. Anyways, make sure to save a basket for winter in said pantry. Bring the buds home, take your mortar and pestle, and begin grinding the buds up. Add some honey and or water to make a rough, golden paste. Then pour in the milk of this livestock animal. They are called mulroth, and their wild variants are extinct. They are descended from horses and other equids, and are like of a perfect livestock in a way. Their shaggy fur coats of either grey, brown or white, tipped with black, are useful for cloth or tapestries, and their meat is packed with protein near the legs and face, and are fattier near the stomach and torso. Their milk is savoury, and they produce a lot of it, feeding on vast pastures every day. This makes them valuable animals to rear to the Gilbalo. Where was I? Oh yes. So you take the ground up basilmouth bud paste, and then you pour it and some mulroth into a bowl. Stir vigorously for about half an hour, preferably over an open fire for maximum yield from the buds, which at this stage are popping like popcorn. If you did everything correctly, behold, you have some traditional Gilbalo stew called moot stew, colloquially. Many variations of this dish are circulating, as the stew on its own is tasty, but a standard bowl would make a whole meal. It tastes a little bit like, say, garlic and with a tint of sugar. The hardy, starchy tubers and spuds of the foothills, in which the Gilbalo reside, are often eaten with the stew on the side, or are ground up into smaller pieces and poured into the stew for a more varied meal. Others use the fattier meat of the mulroth if they're eating the stew in a festival or in a extended family gathering. Now, moving on from the Gilbalo cuisine, another main feature of the Gilbalo is their extensive pottery work. The white, brown and red clay in their foothills is abundant and easy to gather, so a rich tradition of pottery has developed in the Gilbalo people. They used the green dyes and pigments from basilmouth and simple grasses to paint abstract concepts onto their work. Other main colours are red and brown, made by mixing clay and water, gold, made by soaking these local inland reed-looking plants, and occasionally white, made with these flowers. Styles of pottery include aragon, which involves a tall clay vessel, typically with golden and red paintings used to store food; ferragon, which entails green and white or brown colorations with a white shallow bowl; and finally estigan, which sees the painting of landscapes and abstract concepts into the pottery. Pottery in clay in general is an integral part to Gilbalo art and culture. Other than the traditional oral storytelling, pottery is a vital tool by the Gilbalo to preserving their tales, folklore. Never mind. Before the Gilbalo became a sedentary people, they were nomadic. They would herd their mulroth and goats across the pastures of the foothills at great haste, leaving some lands for an entire season to grass, so grass and ferns may grow back for their livestock. During those days, the Gilbalo lived in these beige or brown tents, which could easily fold up and be carried on one's back, and were fashioned from mulroth and goat's fur. A typical proto-Gilbalo would carry not only their tent, but also their provisions, tools, and other items of interest, such as family heirlooms or objects of sentiment. This resulted in the Gilbalo being a minimalistic culture who frown on materialism, as possessing as little objects as possible was advantageous. However, nowadays they live in these kind of like mound hobbit style houses. They are perfect for retaining in the heat or the cold, and are extremely distinctive compared to the lowlander styles of housing. Their construction involves the making of a basic stone foundation, fashioned from the rocks and stones of the hills, and then the building of several rounded wooden support beams. The wood is either chopped down from pines or from trade with the lowlanders. Then the spaces between the wooden beams are filled with clay. It is a status symbol to have time consuming to make white clay walls. However, the Gilbalo, as has been said, frowns on materialism and has no care for status symbols. Then a door is carved in alongside some single paned windows if the family has enough money to purchase such glass. These are very distinctly Gilbalo, as those folk value nature, building, and working with their own two hands, and are fond of tea. Why are they fond of tea, you may ask? Well, because tea is just the best. Like, come on, have you ever tasted tea? It's so good. Here's some standard Gilbalo clothing. Notice the green and beige coloration. The beige is the natural colour of sun mulroth, and all Gilbalo goat's fur is used in clothing, which are of a hardier breed compared to others, like in the lowlands. The green is from the dyes of the basilmouth fern, which is present in nearly all Gilbalo raiments. Their garments are practical and sturdy, ready to endure the tough hills and winds in which the Gilbalo reside. Now, while there is more to the Gilbalo culture, which I have yet to flesh out, I think I'll leave the world building of the hill folk for now. Thanks. I hope that you enjoyed this video. It was a little bit less formal than the last tree. That's mainly because these projects and videos are getting kind of huge, which I think was apparent in the previous one with all those maps, the detailed elevations, and also in this one to an extent with all the wars and the historical maps, and yeah. But I'm actually really excited to be starting to get to more of the cultural kind of aspects and the history, and yeah, I expect the next episode to be covering some of the politics of Iridéa or the history of Iridéa and Teal. That'll be all. Thanks.